know we can both be...
A bit much.
Remaking a movie from only 2 years ago that I've not seen is certainly a very bold move, to say the least. The question is, was it worth it? I mean, I don't know, because I've not seen that original. What I do know, though, is at the very least, this movie's pretty damn good. James McAvoy, wow. James McAvoy. Okay. You know what I meant. Gives maybe my favourite performance he's ever given. A simultaneously charming and sadistic performance. This character, along with the whole film, has a lot to say about a lot of things, whilst never becoming too head-bashing and overbearing with its themes, even though it's not very subtle about them. Mackenzie Davis and Scoot McNairy are also great in the film as our protagonist couple. Meeting Paddy and Kira whilst on a holiday vacation, attempting to rekindle their love for each other after it's revealed a bit later that she sexted someone else, which obviously has put a massive toll on their relationship together. After receiving a postcard offering them to actually take this up and join Paddy and Kira at their home, they say yes, thinking that it could be good to continue working on themselves after they had such a good time in Italy. From their point of view, a seemingly more idealist family relationship compared to where they're at, presented visually too with when they return to the UK, just the two of them, and Agnes, their daughter, how it's such a sharp contrast and it's thundering and raining and awful compared to the nice, relaxed, calm Italy. When they arrive at Paddy's, their lifestyle is so different to their own that they are a little put off and a little thrown, but they're trying to be mindful that these people live in a completely different scenario than they do. They just seem to live life in a different manner. This idea is returned to a lot in the film. What Louise sees as weird, they're heckled at for having prejudgment on a certain expectation on how to, live, which is hypocritical from Paddy, because we've already seen how he almost looks down on their parenting, thinking they're too harsh on their daughter while they were abroad, not allowing them ice cream, and how Louise wasn't keen on Agnes riding the motorbike, but Paddy is like,
I won't call the fun police if you don't.
Okay.
throwing judgment just quite subtly. And whilst Paddy and Kira are seemingly having the most fun time with their kid Ant, they seem like the fun wannabe family. And this is what the film does really well. It's a great look at social darkness. I think the film is really in tune with society today, and I can see it not being for everyone, because for sure a lot of the horror comes from quite unconventional scenes. There are a couple of good moments of actual tension, and I would have liked a few more of those actually, but the truly real moments that make you are ones that are more discomforting and just uncanny or straight up fucking weird. It's a film that puts you in scenarios that you dread of being in, not in the downright scary, but in the seemingly everyday life scenarios. What is the most awkward outcome that you can think of? The build-up of weirdness is pretty gradual. There are loads of little things that make you doubt Paddy from second one. Of course, we know from the trailer that we've seen a million too many times that he is the antagonist, but the build-up is still very effective in the actual film. Paddy feeding Louise meat despite her saying she's a vegetarian, but only being able to follow that up the next day. And Paddy being able to defend himself pretty easily, sorry, you should have said something, so sorry, saying how bad he feels and everything, and kind of calling Louise out on her compliance whilst apologising. And this is another big theme of the film. We as people are so often incredibly compliant in every situation, no matter what. Whether we want to be there or not, we end up just complying with it because we're thinking about how the person opposite us is feeling. And this film utilises that really well, because that's how it almost gives an excuse for stupid horror movie decisions. There are moments that make you want to scream at the characters in this film, just at why are they doing this, and it's actually kind of the point. And for sure, some people aren't going to like that, and that's more than understandable, to be fair. But for me, I thought it justified it well within the context of what's happening in the film, as well as taking into account the themes and how it works right alongside with that. We all know the stereotype of a stupid horror character. It's been around for a long time, and this film does make you want to scream at their choices, but I'd buy these characters would make these decisions within the context. One night, Louise finds Agnes in Paddy and Kira's bed, and so they leave in the middle of the night, because that's weird. But then they realise that they've left Agnes's toy, which she can't sleep without. So she starts having a panic attack and scratching herself, so after some hesitation, they decide to turn around and go back into the house to get it in the hopes that Paddy and Kira aren't yet awake. Obviously, that doesn't happen though, and they find themselves in the awkward confrontation
You flipped out and tried to leave without saying goodbye?
with Paddy and Kira spinning another story, explaining why Agnes was in their bed, again turning it around and manipulating the protagonists, making them feel bad and feel like they're the ones in the wrong for judging, and so they're convinced to stay. They're so conscious of being seen by rude or bad or anything negative by these people that they don't even know that well, that they're just roped straight back in. Even though, for all we know, everything they've said throughout every second of the movie has been a total lie. The interesting thing as well is how Paddy very much represents a symbol of toxic masculinity. I really struggle to say that. Seeing himself as superior because of his outlook on life, but really is a hypocrite preaching about honesty and being open, antagonising the couple for not doing so. But as I just said, they've set up a whole facade this entire time to the point we can't trust them at any time. There's a moment at the end of the film where shit really hits the fan, and Kira is attempting to say that she was dragged into Paddy's sick games. We hear earlier that they met when Kira was much younger than Paddy, and so it's a bit of a question about how old they were when they got together, and Kira starts saying that she was dragged into Paddy's games and that he was the first of his victims, despite the fact that throughout most of the film they've seemingly been in it together. And following this really makes you doubt and hope to see the best in people. Even Louise doubts for a second, she looks but ends up just leaving anyway. That's because that's been the downfall of this entire movie. They've tried to see the best and tried to hope and been wrong, and that's been like weaponized against them. And we'll probably never know if that was another manipulation or the truth, but I like that we don't know. We see one person who is all the way at the end of that spectrum being Paddy, another who has been completely used in this cycle, and then Kira, who is left completely vague. With Ant and the climax of the film where he goes back to kill Paddy, it again looks at how the environment shapes a person. We got potential hints of Paddy's backstory and how maybe his childhood and parentage put him into where he is now, which it's never excusing anything, but it more explains it. And again, we don't even know if it does, because it could all be bullshit, but maybe Paddy's childhood shaped him into the psycho he's become. And now, despite Ant's position, that aggression scene at the end is a result of the treatment that he's got from Paddy, again represented in how we have the final shot in the car viewing Ant and Agnes in the rearview mirror as they drive away, mirroring the opening shot where assumedly it's right after they've taken Ant. As mentioned, the film is pretty clear about its messages and what it's trying to do. All of its themes are simply tied to the plot of the film. All of its themes basically are the plot. It's a wide look at the social state of people, pretty much. It is on the nose, and I can see how that would put people off. But for me, it just goes hand in hand with what it's showing us, and what it's showing us I find entertaining as well, and relatively investing. It's completely intertwined with the characters and the plot, including the pressures of relationships, as I mentioned, toxic masculinity, parent abuse, so many different things, all that it lays out pretty clear. Ben in the film is influenced by Paddy's toxic masculinity, with finding strength in himself to explain his feelings and be upfront with Louise, but in that falls back and is unable to stand up to Paddy because he's fallen into that toxic manipulation, and leads to him not considering Louise's side of the story. At the end of the film, Louise has a real outburst as Paddy continues to push them, after a series of scenes that feel set up to be a trap and destined to lead to disaster, and none of them do, and it does make you question the sanity of these characters, because why are they just doing this still? But they do it anyway, and Louise has that burst, which is one of the only times they've been completely transparent throughout the entire movie. Definitely not a perfect movie though. I mean, the main flaw for me is I feel like the final act doesn't really pay off everything well enough. It's good, but it's a drop in quality from everything up until that point. I think it could have gone harder with the brutality and seeing more of the predator nature of Paddy. And I liked all the weird stuff, of course, and the social anxiety that it creates and the commentary, but I think as a film it needed an extra punch at the end. And I mean, the moment with Ant smashing the brick on his head is good, but I think there just could have been more. It's still a pretty satisfying final act, but I just don't think it's as good, and I think the film had earned better. I find the film truly fascinating, and I would like to get round to the original at some point down the line, but all of these characters are so flawed in so many ways. They all have some kind of darkness, and this scenario that they get pushed into forces them to confront that head first, after clearly some time just sitting by and almost ignoring it and letting that build. The actual plot, in context, I find really effective too. I didn't expect the twist to actually be that Paddy has been taking children from each family, almost in an attempt to build an ideal family. Again, more of a hint, as well as the dialogue, that his upbringing is what made him the way he is, and he's convinced himself that he can do better than these disjointed families that have their issues. But in turn, look at where his treatment leads Ant. I was unsure what to expect here, considering the annoying nature of seeing the trailer everywhere, but with incredible performances all around, scenes that test how uncomfortable you can get. There's one in particular at a dinner table where Kira and Paddy at least appear to start a certain sexual act right in front of Louise and Ben, and it just makes you cringe. It's awful. But again, Louise and Ben just allow it and laugh it off. They're so compliant, as so many of us are, and that's why I think the film is effective. If you haven't seen Speak No Evil yet, I'd go and watch it, at the very least, for James McAvoy.
Oh, well, that is very sweet of you to say.